Hey everyone, welcome to the Sober Strength podcast. This is episode 43, and I'm your host, Jesse Karajat. You're tuning into an important episode. Frankly, I've been excited to publish this one since we recorded the conversation about a month ago. We're going to talk all about a drug called Naltrexone. Naltrexone, if you don't know what it is, I'm delighted to educate you on this and bring it to your awareness. Naltrexone is a powerful drug that helps with alcohol use disorder. You can take it while wanting to cut back on drinking or drink moderately, or you can use it as a powerful tool to cut out drinking completely in combination with other things that we all commonly know and understand, like habit tracking, accountability, community, and whatnot. Naltrexone, for some frustrating reasons, is unknown by many people, especially by the people who need it the most. And the reasons behind why less people know about it are frustrating. It gets into pharmaceutical companies and profits and things like that. And we'll unpack this on this episode. But I'm just delighted to unpack this topic. And the guest that joined me, I couldn't have a better guest to do so. His name is Jonathan Hunt-Glassman. Jonathan is the founder of a company called Oar Health. Now, Oar Health is a company that you can go to actually get Naltrexone, but they're also doing a lot of awareness campaigns and education and marketing just to help the general public know that Naltrexone is out there for people to take. So Jonathan joined the show. He shared his personal story, how and why he started this company. And it's because, as he puts it, he needed a company like Oar Health so that he himself could get the help that he needs. And by the way, he currently takes Naltrexone. He goes into his story. We also talk about why it is that it's kind of taking so long for Naltrexone to be more utilized by the people who need it. And we just discuss everything that you could possibly want to know. So without further ado, I hope the conversation enlightens you and helps you in your own journey. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jonathan Hunt-Glassman to the show. Well, hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm sitting here with Jonathan Hunt-Glassman, founder and CEO of Oar Health, a leading provider of doctor-prescribed medication for alcohol use disorder. How you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing exceptionally well. Particularly excited for this conversation, and I'll lead off with this before I get into my first question. But you know this about me, Jonathan. We've gotten in touch over the last month or so. And I discovered medication for alcohol use disorder relatively recently. And in my journey of forming the best relationship possible with alcohol, for me, I tried everything. And I honestly and candidly will say, I did not know there was a solution out there such as the one that you're offering. And now that I've found it, I've kind of made it my personal mission to let as many people know as possible. So I'm ecstatic to have you here. Thank you for being here. And I want to jump right in and again, revisiting your kind of title, right? Founder and CEO of Oar Health. Why did you start this company and just what's your personal story?
I started Oar Health because I needed a solution like Oar Health myself. My story is going to have a lot of echoes of the one that you just summarized. I struggled with alcohol misuse from the day I started drinking. What started as binge drinking in high school and college became a pattern of drinking to blackout in my 20s. And then as I saw my peer group start to put excessive alcohol use in the rearview mirror, the opposite was happening for me. I was having multi-day binges. I was experiencing the physical and mental health symptoms of withdrawal on the back end of those. And so things were pretty rough. And over those 15 years or so, it was no secret to me that I had a drinking problem. So I sought help in a lot of the places that first come to mind and are better known. Alcoholics Anonymous, individual psychotherapy, primary care, the emergency room, and pretty much always heard the same thing, which was you need to stop drinking and start going to meetings. And I tried that. But what was much more of a turning point was connecting with a different primary care physician who suggested prescription medication as a new tool in the toolkit to help achieve my goals. That helped me get control back over alcohol, but it also opened my eyes to how many people there are like you and I who aren't aware of this safe, effective tool. And it felt like the world needed a place to get access to it.
Yeah. A question on that. I have to say, when I'm just sitting here talking to you and getting to know you, and what I'm about to say is meaningless, you and I know that, but you don't seem like someone who would struggle with alcohol. Just first impressions, right? Because there's caricatures and stereotypes of what that looks like. There's this kind of like rock bottom idea of someone who's going to hit that point. That is simply color to ask this question. What is it about you? And I'm sure you've done a lot of introspection and self-discovery over the years, but you mentioned your peers were moving away from alcohol, but you got stuck in a rut and it got worse. Have you been able to pinpoint what it is about you deep down that allowed, I would say, alcohol to kind of seek itself into you and latch itself onto you in your life?
You're right that it's something I've thought a lot about. I think I have a tendency towards perfection and perfectionism. And so the pattern that developed is that while I was able to project a image of confidence and competence in most settings, I didn't know how to relax or how to deal with the imperfections and disappointments that we all have. And alcohol became a answer, not a very good answer, but an answer to those questions. It helped when I was feeling socially insecure. It was a way of celebrating successes and dealing with disappointments. And, you know, it stood in for, and in some ways stunted the development of more mature ways to handle the ups and downs that we all have in our lives.
Yeah, well said. On this show, we've talked about several guests how, alcohol is effective at doing two things. And when you allow it to do those two things, that's when it really gets a hold of you. And those two things are amplifying social experiences or positive experiences, or numbing difficult experiences with more of that like self-medication. And when you kind of use it intentionally or sometimes even subconsciously, like in the sense where you're just trying to relax in a social setting, and you do that repetitively over time, it is so hard to dislodge it from your life.
I think that's, incredibly perceptive. Sometimes I, will say that I think alcohol can be seductive because in the short term, it can be so responsive to the challenges, the difficult feelings, the stressful situations we find ourselves in. And it's only over a longer time horizon that we realize there are some negative effects and how dependent in some cases we've become on alcohol as a crutch in those difficult moments or to enhance the exciting ones.
Yeah, for sure. And so how long were you on this journey of trying to quote unquote fix alcohol before this, I'll call her, I said her, I don't know if it was a him or her, but this angel physician prescribed this medication for you? But how long was that journey for you before you found the medication that you found?
A solid 10 to 15 years.
Wow.
My first attempt at sobriety, I was still in college. And, certainly in my 20s, went to AA meetings, went to therapy in my later 20s, which was quite helpful in a number of regards, but didn't really put a dent in the drinking that had become part of my lifestyle. And so it wasn't until I was into my 30s that I did kind of have the good fortune to connect with a primary care physician who, met me without judgment, listened to my goals, suggested tools that were consistent with them, including medication. And so, yeah, he definitely was an angel in my life.
Yeah. And I know that just from, again, my own journey now discovering you and Oar Health, that I know that one of the greatest opportunities for people to find this medication is through doctors becoming more aware and more comfortable prescribing it. Why do you think it is, and this might be speculation on your part, but why do you think it is that this particular physician knew to do that?
He was kind of the practice's go-to guy for folks who are struggling with substance misuse or other issues of addiction and compulsion. So I think that means that he had probably spent more time with the evidence, the recommended best practices in this area, had more familiarity with what the evidence-based recommendations are, which include offering safe, effective medication to patients, and through experience, perhaps, had developed a comfort in and a confidence in dealing with these issues that not all clinicians have. That's one of the challenges we face in terms of helping people get access to these medications is, by and large, physicians and other healthcare professionals in the United States still don't get enough training about treating addiction relative to how often it's going to come up in their panels. It doesn't fit into the medical school curriculum that tends to go organ by organ. And so as a result, there are still a lot of healthcare professionals who just don't feel comfortable and confident addressing these issues. They may screen for it, they may not, but too often patients are still being handed a pamphlet for AA or referred to specialty treatment, both good things, both options that should be on the menu. But I would like to see physicians and other healthcare professionals more broadly recognize that they have a tool right in front of them that can help people. Their prescription pad, or these days, their electronic e-prescribing software.
Right. I had a prior guest on the show, Corey Turner, who came on, and she is a trainer of trainers for alcohol use disorder and substance use disorder. That is context to say, it stood out to me. One of the things that she described was relative to alcohol treatment, there's the moral model, which is, it views, and these are my words, paraphrasing, but it views an alcohol dependence as a moral failing or a weakness of the person. And the ways traditionally or societally that we would treat that is through Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a whole nother conversation, by the way, what that is and what it's not, right? But where she perceives the opportunity going forward is to move it more towards the medical model, as she put it. Like, this is something that can and should be treated in a clinical setting, in addition to things like community and meetings and accountability and fitness, which we can talk about. But the way you described that there, it feels like you met with a physician who believes and is bought into the idea that this is something that can and should be treated medically. Hi, I'm Jesse Karajat, founder of Altum Fitness, where our mission is to help you break free from unhealthy habits and mindsets to find true physical and emotional fitness. The Altum Fitness app is a world-class fitness companion offering expertly designed workout programs personalized to any goal and any experience level. By joining this community, you'll gain access to top-notch expert training programs, nutritional guidance, habit change programs, and so much more, all tailored to help you achieve your unique goals. By joining Altum Fitness, you'll also gain access to our exclusive companion community, the Altum Tribe. In the Tribe, you'll find access to expert coaches, habit change programs, live challenges, events, and so much more. It's a space to connect, learn, grow, and be motivated as you navigate your fitness journey. For one low monthly subscription, you'll be granted full access to our fitness app, community, exclusive challenges and content, and so much more. So join Altum Fitness today and become part of our amazing community. Download now and let's live deep.
I think that's right. Our advisors at Oar Health include primary care physicians. And, one of them said to me that he thinks about treating alcohol use disorder as more similar than different to the other sorts of chronic health conditions that he sees in his practice every day, treating primarily senior citizens in New York City. And so if someone comes to him with blood pressure or cholesterol that's way too high, putting them at risk for all sorts of negative health outcomes, what's he going to do? He's going to recognize that this patient has a health condition experienced by millions of people, just like AUD. He's going to talk to the patient about their goals. Of course, he wants to get them to national guidelines, but any progress in the right direction is good progress. And then he's going to recommend a menu of evidence-based treatment options that's likely to include medication, behavioral interventions, and lifestyle changes. And those lifestyle changes and behavioral interventions can include mutual peer support or other forms of support in the community. This is not a secret recipe. It's a recipe that doctors apply every day to dozens of healthcare conditions. We need to do it more commonly in regard to alcohol use disorder and other addictions.
Amen. Amen. And since I've been kind of my eyes been open to this as an option for people, I just think common sense wise, like we're so quick as people when we have an illness, a sickness, an ailment to take medication for it. I mean, we take ibuprofen for pain. A lot of people take, medication for anxiety and mental health and things like that. But for some reason, not yet. And I know this is a lot of what Oar Health is seeking to do, but it still feels to me like there's a stigma around taking medication for alcohol use disorder. And that's a problem. But a quick question, because I want to stay on your story. I have one more question about kind of your story and what inspired you to do what you're doing. But I want to take you back to, let's just say, your first week taking the medication. The doctor prescribed it. You probably with a lot of hope, because it sounds like it had been 10 plus years. You were looking for a solution. You go to the pharmacy, you get your pills, and you take it. What was that first week like? Physically, mentally, what were you feeling? What were you experiencing? Just kind of walk us through if you can remember, and I'm sure you can.
I'll tell you about that first week, but I think it's important to come clean that there was an intervening month between picking up the tablets and taking the first one where they just sat on my shelf. And that sort of ambivalence about getting started is not unheard of. I kind of was wondering about what the downsides of success might be. Was my entire life and all my friendships going to change? They didn't. What ultimately got me over the hump to taking that first dose was kind of adopting a bit of a experimental mindset, saying, I'm not making any lifelong decisions here. I'm going to take one dose, probably have a drink this evening, and see what the results are. I was extremely lucky in that I noticed immediate results. My biggest problem with alcohol had always been that somewhere around that third or fourth drink, I just lost control. And when I started, drinking with naltrexone in my system, the first drink was about the same, but the second one was just a lot less exciting and took a lot longer to finish. And in fact, went unfinished, which was a novel experience for me. And so I very quickly started to notice that I was just having a completely different experience of drinking, and pretty quickly started to feel I could regularly achieve my goal, which was to drink in moderation and to not get near the danger zone of blackouts. Of course, individuals' responses to naltrexone or any other medication do vary. So I don't want to represent my experience as universal. There are folks who experience side effects in the first week, nausea being the most common as their body gets used to the medication. There are those who take weeks and months to achieve their goals. And of course, there are some for whom either medication alone or medication, whatever else they're doing, is not adequate to achieve their goals. So it's not a silver bullet, but there are, at this point, tens and tens of thousands of stories like mine where it's a really helpful tool in people getting closer to achieving their goals.
Yeah. I'll share my experience because, before we became engaged, it was really important for me. Like I wanted to try the product. Obviously, I'd heard about the benefits of it. And I had a little bit of, for no particular reason, skepticism. I was like, it felt to me like it was too much of a, I don't know, miracle maybe. Like how can people spend years trying to combat this thing, but there's this pill sitting there that can just quote fix it, right? So that is context to say I went in with a little bit of skepticism. And now here's my quote unquote drinking issue, right? Or my challenge for me is it's at the end of the day, transitioning from a productive kind of work mindset into being present at home. And now for me, and this is a unique experience for me, but also for many others, is I have 3 young kids. They're loud, they're messy, they're having emotional, breakdowns. My wife and I are trying to prepare dinner, keep the clean house, right? But I'm always ruminating still about things that I didn't finish from the work day, things that I'm stressed about in the future. And for me, that combination of like unsettled kind of business, but then being present in all these like loud, chaotic noises, the way I've learned to describe it is I just feel scattered, and maybe it's some brand of stressed, but I just sit there and feel so uncomfortable. And the insidious habit that I developed was I'm going to, right at 5 o'clock, 5:30 at that time, I'm going to grab, frankly, the heaviest beer possible, which was a premeditated decision right before that week started. So that turned into 1, turned into 2, turned into 3. So literally all that to say, like, my triggering moments are in that transitional kind of early evening time frame. Mm-hmm. So that's where I immediately go to instinctively, like, where's my beer? Where's my drink? So when I, for the first time, took naltrexone, I was acutely aware of that time frame and waiting to see how I felt. And I think it was the third day, maybe the fourth day, that I just stopped in my tracks. I couldn't believe it. My wife was having a glass of wine. And I sat there, and the best way I can put it internally, I was like, holy crap, I don't give a damn about that. Like, normally I would feel this magnetic pull and I would have to resist strongly and almost like focus myself for a while. I was going on walks just to kind of bridge that gap and create space, but I couldn't believe it. So I, like you, I think of one of the people that had that more of a instant response in the first week, but it blew my mind. And sorry for the speech, but I'm excited to share this with you because it was your product, but it friggin' blew my mind that it literally, that this medication turned off something that felt like it was this deep urge that was going to take months to go away, and discipline as well. So it just blew my mind. And that's why we're here. That's why I'm excited about you.
Yeah, well, it's an exciting story to hear. And I think it definitely exemplifies a theme that I've heard from a number of people who've been successful in the kind of medication can be that last piece of the puzzle that makes something you clearly had as a goal and were clearly working hard on with the strategies you'd already developed just a little bit easier. It doesn't have to be all willpower.
Yeah. And at that same time when I tried it, I mean, I'm getting good sleep, I'm working out, I'm trying to meditate and be mindful during the day, and I would still feel the remnants of that kind of like stress and that urge. So to your point, just having the medication as another tool in my tool belt, it felt like it just eradicated, those same cravings that sometimes would lead to slip ups and whatnot. But so when you started having that realization, like, wow, I'm 2 drinks in and I can stop, right? My words and yours. What was that like for you? What was that revelation like for you? And then how did that revelation turn to what you're doing now?
Yeah, it was pretty eye-opening. I remember a moment when I was in New Orleans for work, a city that I love, but have definitely abused alcohol in. And I was kind of winding down for the night at 9:00 p.m. or so. And it just struck me, oh, I'm going to be well rested and ready to go at this 8 a.m. meeting that I have at a hospital the next day. And a year ago, before starting medication, there's no way that a work trip to New Orleans would have played out that way. And so that moment really was the first seed where I thought, this could be really valuable to a lot of other people. And then it didn't take too much research to confirm that, my story, your story, they're not unique in that there are 30 million people in the United States who meet the diagnostic criteria for alcohol use disorder, and about 2% are prescribed any medication to help them drink less or to quit. And so I went to business school, and what they taught us was, when you see a huge potential market of people with a need that are dramatically underserved by existing solutions, that is an opportunity. In this case, hopefully an opportunity not just to build a business, but to help more people get access to the right tools to help them.
Yeah, both. Yeah, it's both. It's a business opportunity and an opportunity to genuinely help people. You and I were chatting offline before we hit record on this, and I said it offline, I'll say it online, but what you're doing, the business that you're in, is changing people's lives. And I don't mean to be too cliche or dramatic in saying that, but by introducing this solution into their lives, you're changing their lives in the moments that matter every day. You're changing their relationships if they can get healthy with alcohol, how people view themselves. You're changing legacies. And now I am droning on, but I just have such an adoration for the difference you're making. So where did you go from there? Because you mentioned tens and thousands of people have benefited from, this medication, but it sounds to me like only one of them decided to go out and start a business. So where did you go from there? Hey everybody, sorry to interrupt this episode. It's your host, Jesse Karajet, and I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying this episode, would you please consider subscribing to the show and leaving a rating and review? That simple act goes such a long way to help us grow the show, reach more people, and make a positive impact in their lives. So thank you for considering, and now back to the show.
These thoughts, these experiences were all hitting me in an era where we were seeing more and more use of telemedicine as a solution to increase access to needed healthcare, particularly in stigmatized conditions where people might not know where to turn or might not feel comfortable discussing the issue with the healthcare providers already in their lives. And so it was pre-pandemic, which accelerated telehealth adoption, but we were at least seeing the beginnings. And so, in January of 2021, we put a product in market, Oar Health, where people, can use the internet and the tools of telehealth to learn more about alcohol use disorder and medication-assisted treatment. We don't take for granted that those are household names for everybody like they are for you and me. And if it feels like something that might be helpful to them, get started through a consultation with a doctor or a nurse practitioner licensed in their state, get a prescription if medically appropriate, and if they wish, get that medication shipped directly to them, reliably and discreetly. And, when you start a new business, you don't know if you're going to have 0 customers or 1 million. It's more likely to be 0. And we were certainly close to 0 for a while, but really from the very beginning, we did start to see people find us, which was an encouraging sign that there was unmet demand. That wasn't just what the statistics suggested might be the case, was the case in reality. And then we've grown from there. More members, more states that we have licensed clinicians in, more tools to support people beyond the medication once they get started.
Yeah. How many states are you currently serving?
41. So we're almost there.
Getting there. Okay. And walk us through this and put you on a spot here a little bit and your scientific explanation here, but how does it work? How does naltrexone actually work?
Naltrexone, which is the frontline recommended medication for the treatment of alcohol use disorder, cools off the pleasure and reward that we feel from alcohol. To get a little bit more scientific about it, it binds to an opioid receptor in our brain. And there's no opioids in alcohol, but drinking does cause our body to produce what are called endogenous opioids. And by blocking the receptor in the brain where those opioids are seeking, we're able to interrupt the dopamine cascade and therefore the feelings of pleasure and reward that alcohol can generate. Interestingly, so that helps to explain kind of the main effect I noticed, which was breaking that feedback loop of 1 drink feels good, let's have 2 feels great, let's have even more. Interestingly, naltrexone has also been shown to be effective in reducing cravings, even when we're not drinking, which sounds like something that you experienced.
Yep.
And, that's a little bit less direct, but we do know that anticipation can activate the same pathways in our brain that use of the substance does. And so it's not a shocking finding, but it's a really nice one. And one of the consequences or implications is that naltrexone is appropriate both for people who are seeking moderation as their goal and those who are seeking sobriety. It can support both.
Oh, I see. Now here's a tricky question. It just popped into my head here. How does this medication specifically target our response to alcohol while not also eliminating pleasurable effects of other things that produce endorphins, things that are, I'll say, more healthy, or even things like adrenaline or whatever? So how does it specifically do that and not leave us in a place where, okay, not only are we not craving alcohol, but now we're just flat and we're not craving these other things? Does that make sense?
Oh, it definitely makes sense. I think it's one of the more common concerns about beginning treatment with naltrexone. We don't have any reliable evidence that naltrexone dulls pleasure from anything other than alcohol and opioids. So generally, people are still able to enjoy exercise, time with family and loved ones, sex, all sorts of things that give us pleasure. I think the explanation for that is that naltrexone is binding to a very specific receptor, and we have all sorts of pleasure and reward pathways in our bodies. And so while it's very good at interrupting the reward pathways activated by alcohol and opioids, it doesn't interfere with kind of how we feel from other important activities. In fact, I would go so far as to say that when we're saying no or less to alcohol, that's actually a great time to be saying yes or more to activities that activate natural, healthy reward pathways. They go really well together.
Yeah.
There is, I do want to add that there is, a approach to taking naltrexone called targeted use. And sometimes, which means not taking it every day, as most of us do, but taking it only when we expect to be drinking. And that is sometimes an approach that's favored by those who are concerned about dulling pleasure from other sources. And we think that's a legitimate and helpful way to take naltrexone also.
Okay, so you would advocate for either of those methods, one being a daily consistent, taking of the pill versus more targeted when you're going to socialize. You would say either or?
Yeah, there's good evidence that both are effective. The large randomized controlled trials that were the basis for the medication's approval by the FDA used daily use. So we have a bigger body of evidence for daily use, but there is also evidence that targeted use can be effective. There haven't really been head-to-head trials in a meaningful way of the two. So I'm going to refrain from saying you got to do it this way or you got to do it this way. I think both are very reasonable approaches.
Well said. I want to talk about or try to understand why this medication isn't more widely known and therefore used. Clearly, two guys right here on this call, amazing results with it, right? For me, basically curbing triggers and cravings. For you, curbing overindulgence. My words, not yours. What do you think, or what have you put your finger on to be able to explain why, if this is working and science is backing it and there's minimal side effects, why isn't this more well known?
Not surprisingly, something I've thought about a lot.
I bet.
I've come up with three reasons.
What do you
One
got?
is the medication has been generic for decades. In fact, it's been generic since before direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising existed in a meaningful way. And so there's no pharma company with the economic incentive to make naltrexone a household name like Viagra or Lexapro. Number two is one we touched on earlier, which is not enough physician and healthcare professional training. And then lastly, as you said earlier, there is still a little bit of a stigma around using medication to treat addiction. You sometimes still hear the phrase, don't replace one drug with another. And I just don't think that has much to it as a criticism when it comes to a medication like naltrexone that is not addictive, not subject to abuse.
Got it. I was thinking about AA. Do you think that if somehow we can destigmatize the use of naltrexone or medication in general, right? Do you think that anyone that, I don't want to use the word anyone, that people that are in the AA world and are showing up to meetings, do you think that folks leading those meetings and leading that organization, and I know it's a decentralized organization with not a lot of hierarchy, but do you think that medication should be if not like first, second, but like a top three kind of tool that those folks are exposed to?
I do. I think wherever people show up for help, and there's no wrong place to show up in my mind, they should be offered access to the full menu of evidence-based treatment options. That includes mutual peer support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous that have helped millions more than you or I or anyone else. It includes working with a behavioral health care professional like a therapist, and it includes medication. Often it's a combination of these things that's most effective. So we have members at Oar who have assembled their recovery toolkit to include a medication like Naltrexone and support from a group like Alcoholics Anonymous. And that has been the right recipe for them. AA's official position on medication is that AA members should not play doctor to each other. So there's nothing inconsistent about attending AA meetings and using medication. And I think we should, be encouraging individuals to assemble the toolkit that fits them, their goals, their values, their approach to challenging problems.
Yeah, well said. I'm just reflecting on, would I have raised my hand to try this medication earlier on if I knew about it earlier on? And where I think, Jonathan, it gets kind of like deep and maybe unique to me, but right, I'm what you might describe on paper until you get to know me as a little bit of like an alpha male, right? Like I was in the Marines. I get what that perception is like for people. I do martial arts. I'm fairly courageous, and my wife would tell you confrontational if I need to be, right? Like there's all of this kind of like these stereotypical masculine, I think, traits. That simply to say, the idea of this will lean into the stereotype, the needing to take medicine to help alcohol. There's a feeling of kind of like, I think, weakness instinctively that might prevent me from raising my hand. And I'm not saying that that's right or true, because it's absolutely not. But I think, and this is me just speculating and reacting to you, but I think part of that stigma could be what AA kind of leans into. It's like, you need to be able to fight through this, and you need to be abstinent. It's black and white. You need to get through this, and this is the way. It's by accountability and community. So kind of garbled thoughts there, but I think, and maybe you can just respond to that, but maybe there's some like, societal expectations of men in particular that might prohibit them from saying yes to something that's going to make their life a whole lot easier, a whole lot faster.
I think it's absolutely a real and fairly widespread barrier to the adoption of medication-assisted treatment. I think we fall into traps when we get too extreme in our thinking. It's probably a trap to think, I need superhuman levels of willpower to change my relationship with alcohol, and only superhuman levels of willpower will do it. No matter how strong the discipline we've built in our lives is. But on the other side of that coin, it is also a bit of a trap to think all I need to do is take this pill and all of my problems will be solved. For most of us, it's a combination of tools and approaches. One way I think about it is those of us who developed problems with alcohol, it usually was due to a combination of factors. In many cases, a biological or genetic predisposition. The settings we found ourselves in, were we in a culture that promoted a lot of drinking? And then decisions we made as individuals and probably need to take accountability for. And so it's always made sense to me that when we're trying to change that problematic relationship, it's useful to go at as many of those drivers of problematic behavior as possible. The medication's going to go at the biochemical, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be seeking out support from AA or other sources of accountability and support. And it doesn't mean that there's no role whatsoever for personal agency, accountability, and willpower. If you can summon that to the journey, absolutely do so.
Yeah, well said. And it makes me think, like, all of our goals in this fleeting life, it's not just to have a better relationship with alcohol or no relationship. It's to live healthy. It's to have good relationships. It's to take care of our minds and our bodies and do everything that we know that we're supposed to do to be healthy, of which, yes, alcohol can be disastrous for our overall health. So the way I picture it, it's like you have to do so much more than just take the medication. If you're moving towards a healthier life, it's are you exercising? Are you sleeping? What are you eating? What's your nutrition? How are your relationships? Do you have unaddressed mental health issues? And yes, also, if you're struggling with alcohol and it's holding all those things back, there is an easy way. And it's, try the medication and also jump into groups and accountability. So it's to me, it's a whole picture. You can't just zero in on just alcohol, because you and I both know that for most people, that's not going to be the end all to be all. When you look forward for Oar Health, and we're talking about breaking down stigmas and making more people aware, what do you see unfolding over the next couple of years, and how are you and how's Oar Health going to put a dent into this alcohol use disorder, I'll call it pandemic, especially post-COVID? What are some of the challenges and how are you going to overcome them?
Number one is increasing awareness of this safe, effective tool called medication, and naltrexone specifically. I hope this conversation goes at least one step in that direction. Two is, once people are aware, try to provide them access. So access to empathetic, expert clinicians, coaches, and pharmacists who can give them confidence in beginning treatment and answer the questions that come up along the way. And then thirdly, even though we're 30 years post the approval of naltrexone by the FDA, we still have a lot to learn about how it can be used more individually and therefore most effectively. Now that we've served 35,000 people at Oar, we want to start using the data in an aggregated, depersonalized way, but to understand things like dosing, ramp-ups, length of treatment. Those are questions where we think we can help the field make medication-assisted treatment even more effective than it is, even as our primary goal remains bringing more people to what we know already is effective.
Yeah. And a question on access. If somebody listening decides they do want to try this for the first time for themselves, walk us through what that process looks like. Where should they go and what will they experience?
It all starts at Oar Health, OAR health.com. We have a lot of resources there to understand AUD and the treatment options thereof. If folks are particularly interested in medication-assisted treatment, they can start an online consultation anytime, any day in 41 states. That will include describing their drinking habits, their general health, mainly so we can make sure that naltrexone is a safe option for them. That all gets reviewed by a clinician who may have additional follow-up questions and who will prepare a treatment plan that, if medically appropriate, may include prescription medication, specifically naltrexone. And then if folks option, they can either get that medication at their local pharmacy, or what a lot of folks opt for is getting it shipped directly from our partner pharmacy.
That's what I did.
As folks start the medication, they can always come back and interact with their clinicians again, join our support group of Oar members, investigate our other resources and options, and find tips, tricks, and referrals to all the things that you were talking about, Jesse, as the things you can be, saying yes to and adding into your life as you're creating a new or zero role for alcohol in it.
Yeah. Is it confidential?
Yes. So we take kind of privacy and confidentiality, quite seriously. Of course, this is healthcare. So the doctor is going to keep a record of the treatment they provided. The pharmacy is going to keep a record of the medication that they dispensed. But we keep that pretty self-contained within the Oar experience. In fact, being able to get started from the privacy of one's own home is one of the main reasons that our members tell us they come to Oar Health.
Yeah. And how long would you say for someone, the moment they visit the website, they fill out the questionnaire, how long does it typically take before they get the treatment, whether it's delivered to their home or it's a local pickup?
Most folks have medication in hand within a week.
That's impressive. In 41 states.
Exactly.
That's impressive. All right. One more question for you, and it's to solicit some feedback for the listeners or maybe some guidance. But is there any kind of like parting words or thoughts that you would want to share with our listeners, whether it's to encourage them, enlighten them, inform them, or anything in between?
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. It's been great talking today.
Floor is yours.
I would say, number one, changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. You've heard two versions of that story today. There are millions of others out there. Number two, options for support and treatment are more numerous and varied than you may expect. If the treatment options you're most familiar with aren't feeling like the right fit for you, it pays to do some research. You don't have to become an expert on every option under the sun, as Jesse and I are trying to become. But, there's probably an option out there that's going to feel like it's a good fit for your goals and preferences. And then lastly, it's never too early or too late to get started on a change project. As you said right off the bat, you don't have to wait until rock bottom. In fact, it's easier if you don't. But on the other side of that coin, no matter how dark and difficult things feel at the moment, it is always possible to build improvement and to build a brighter tomorrow.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Look, like I led with, I'll close with, I really admire what you're doing, the mission behind it, the heart behind it, just getting to know you and your personal experience, that you can relate with the folks that you're serving. So I'll do my part and spread awareness. I'll link to all of the, the appropriate links and websites, and even maybe an AUD assessment to help folks kind of get started if they are interested. But I just wanted to say, Jonathan, thank you for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse. This was really great.
Pleasure's mine. Live deep, everybody. All right, everybody. That's the show, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Sober Strength podcast and spending some time with us today. We've got a favor to ask. If you enjoyed the show, would you please consider subscribing to the show and even leaving a rating and review? That simple act drastically helps us reach more people in our mission to help them live better, longer, healthier lives. You can also follow us if you'd like on Instagram and YouTube for regular tips and motivation around mental health, addiction, and so much more. Know that your support fuels our brand and is greatly appreciated. So until next time, stay strong and live deep.